But honestly, I think it's a really great example as well. If any other, educators are listening to this, is like you are a great example of somebody that's, put their heart and soul into something, written a great book, and made it work. And I'm all for the self-publishing thing. I'm super into it. Yeah, and I did obviously, yeah. Right, and I just think it's great. The internet's just given people so much more power. And if you're willing to put the work in as you are, you can really make it work, And now obviously you've got your videos on like No Treble, and you've been in Bass Musician magazine and Bass Player, and you're at NAMM doing the thing for Marlowe. Basically, actually, before we wrap this up, I've got to ask you about bass gear. I always get told off because I don't ask about bass gear enough, and I'm sort of like a super. Like not gearhead, but everybody else that listens is a real gearhead. So what you're using to create your music?
I have been with Marlowe for a very, very long time. So he had, I think when I met Gerald, he had just barely started doing the basses. I was looking for a new bass. I was playing alembic at the time, which was way too head heavy. Whenever I tried to tune the thing, I had to where's my G string, Yeah. But beautiful bass, and but it was very top heavy, and I just was looking for a 5-string. That was the other reason. And so I met Gerald, and he did this presentation at this little German music store in Munich, and he was presenting his basses. He was so generous about everything. He was taking the bass apart and showing all the patterns. He has like all very special ways how the neck sits into the body. It's very unusual for the sound transmitting through the wood. So it's like a very thought through and just beautiful aesthetics, So I just fell in love with the guy because he's just such a sweetheart, and so open and giving, So we made friends back then, and my husband was like, this is the bass. I mean, he tested all the basses in that store, and they had all sorts of boutique kind of, non-usual and regular and whatnot. He was like, that's your bass. There's just something about it, And then meeting Gerald, it was just so cool. And then we kind of lost touch for a long time. And so I had one Marlowe bass, and I also played Ken Smith at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And I had, that was it. But that was that one bass. And then I, right, the alembic, I couldn't let go of it. So we ripped out the frets and made it fretless for a while. So I did that. I had one Marlowe bass, and then we kind of lost touch over the years. And then at some point I kind of called him. I needed a part or something. And we were talking, and I was like, why don't you come to NAMM show? And he was like, it's very expensive to come to NAMM for, a builder from Germany, and, all the tax situations and the booth and whatnot. And then I said, I'll help you, and so we reconnected, and at that time I really got into his instruments. That's about 12 years ago or so. And, I was getting into all the different models, and I'm like, oh, okay, I could, if you have one more of a Fender type sound, which sometimes is needed, you go with the Votons, and, so now I have 7 of them. And
7?
I'm so lucky. It's amazing, yeah. But I have a 6-string. I have 2 Votons, a 5-string and a 4-string. I have a regular concert. The concerts I have in 4, 5, and 6, and then I have a soprano bass, which are these tiny ones.
The little one.
Awesome. Yeah. They have a very unusual sound. I mean, they're like a real bass, but they sound different, than the bass. So. But I love these basses. They're so comfortable. The neck feels just so logical, and it's just great. And then my 6-string, I set it up for tapping.
So do you have to have it quite low?
I have it a little lower. I mean, I like to dig in whenever I groove, and there are parts where I do groove and play regular groove or chords or something. So I don't like it too low, but I have thinner strings on it for the tapping, and it's a little lower than my regular basses. Yeah, definitely.